Kilroy goes off the shelf on Storming the Gap, World at War 85 from Lock and Load Publishing. Now, of all the games on all the shelves and all the gin joints in the world, why did I pull Storming the Gap, World at War 85 off the shelf today to talk to you? Well, I got a notice from GameFound today. GameFound's like Kickstarter, but its focuses on board games. And I kickstarted, or I should, GameFound, is that the word I should use? Blood and Fury, which is the follow-up expansion to Storming the Gap. Now, Blood and Fury is standalone, but it is basically more of the same, or more goodness for the World at War series. Now, what is the World at War 85 series? Well, it originally started as just World at War, and it was Lock and Load Publishing, but it was mainly under Mark Walker and his design, and they had several in this series over time. You know, Eisenbach Gap was the first one, Blood and Bridges, Untold Story, American Conquer. They even found their way to America. Now, Storming the Gap, World at War 85, is a little bit different version than those series. It's basically the same core system, same core mechanics. They changed up some of the, the graphics and moved some of the counters around as far as, updating the capabilities of the units and kind of arranging information on the counters a little bit. But more importantly, they just added a whole bunch of new stuff, and they added it mainly in the base game, the base box, and in this expansion box. Now, this was part of the Kickstarter. I did not kickstart this. God, what was I, an idiot? I was messing around with this stuff at the time and thought maybe I didn't need this. But then I thought better of it, and I ended up getting it, and I'm happy I did. So you get a lot of stuff that comes with just the core game, but the expansion just adds more. Now, what is this about? This is now about World War 85. Do you get it? It's about hypothetical World War III between the NATO forces and the Soviet Union in Europe predominantly. Now, this series kind of went farther afield and got into Asia and America and the like. But this started out, and the core game is really mainly Europe. And this one is as well, but this adds in some more countries or factions like, Czechoslovakia, a little bit more East Germany, West Germany. This, of course, has Soviet Union, United States, and West Germany, and maybe East Germany in this as well. I've got it all combined together, so it becomes a blur. But this is about hypothetical small unit tactical combat in 1985. What do I mean by small unit tactical? Well, that's basically anything platoon down to individual. This one is platoon level, and so there's not a ton of counters on the board, but enough to really make interesting scenarios, and there's a lot of maneuver. There's a lot of, trying to figure out what's a good advantage point, taking advantage of the terrain. So a very good tactical game. Now, what all do you get in this? And why am I even talking about this? Well, I think Blood and Fury is going to be somewhat similar. I think there's going to be a kind of a core set, and there's some expansions that come with it. And of course, there's some add-ons as well. I think I bought the add-on scenario to it as part of the GameFound. But there's a lot that comes in here. In fact, there's so much that comes in here that, I needed to get ammo crates for my counters. So I keep the counters that came in these two massive boxes in these ammo crates, and actually got some extra ones just in advance of Blood and Fury. But you can fit all the counters for, sorry about that, for these two boxes in two ammo crates. In fact, I got a little bit of extra room in there. Now, how do I store this stuff? Well, in the core box here, I have the rules and charts, and then in the expansion box here, I have the boards and cards. Now, why do you have cards? Well, in the original series, it was a chit pull. It's basically chit pull activation. You're going to pull it, you put, based on the number of units that are available, you put a chit for each of those different formations into a cup. You pull from the cup or whatever vessel you want to use, and then that unit can now activate, meaning it can move, it can fire, it can do whatever a unit can do, depending on what its capability is, if it's not disrupted or something like that. What they did in Blood and Fury, or World at War 85, I should say, is they went to cards. They also went to cards in the Nations at War series. Nations at War? What do you say? This is basically the same setup or system that's in World at War, but this is focusing on World War II. And there's a West Front, an East Front, and an Africa version of this. And this went to cards as well instead of chits. But it's somewhat of the exact same kind of setup and system, but of course it's based on World War II and what's available at that time period. This is based on what is available for these countries and factions in 1985. So instead of chits, you've got cards. And so when you'll put a number of these cards in the deck based on the units that are available or the formations that are available. And then there might be rules specific to a scenario on how many of these go in the deck. But when you pull a card out like this, then you can activate, the Soviet Union can activate any units that are tied to this formation. They can move, they can fire whatever that unit is able to do, whether it's in command or whether it's disrupted and the like. And it also has on this card, this is the morale for those type of units that are tied to that formation. But also it has a full strength headquarter range and a reduced strength headquarter range. So you kind of know what your command range is for the headquarters. Again, this is tactical. You're going to be needing to be near your headquarters or command. Some units don't need to be within command to perform their actions, like recon units. But you're going to have some sense of a command structure to move your units to achieve the objectives of the individual scenarios. You also have cards in here that come with this set that talk about, they're for miniatures, right? So you can play this game as a miniature game and use these cards here, and it basically has what scale, whether it's 6 millimeter, 15 millimeter, or 28 millimeter. That's the scale, tells you what the range is that you're going to need to convert to for that scale for all these different cards in the game. So there's cards for each of the different type of units and vehicles and the like in there. Now your maps are somewhat geomorphic, and you're going to be putting those together based on the scenario. And again, this is very similar to Panzer Leader, which was or Panzer Blitz actually was one of the first ones that came out with like the individual scenarios and the having to put different maps together that match up by roadsides and stuff like that. But that's the same for this. So it's going to be different scenarios. You're going to use different maps that you'll place together, and you have a hex grid. And then the terrain, of course, is very important in this game because it's tactical. So it's going to block line of sight, and it's going to determine movement and defense value and the like. Another interesting thing about this set that was, I think as part of the Kickstarter, you had regular maps, for fall and spring and I guess in summer, but then they had winter maps as well. And I think Blood and Fury is doing that as well. I think that was one of the stretch goals. So you get a winter map that you can use as well. So that's kind of cool, I think. So I keep all my cards and maps in this box, and then in this box I get the rules. Now that looks like a lot of rules there. It's a pretty thick set, but you're really trying to cover all the different types of vehicles and types of situations of modern combat. Again, this is modern combat set in 1985. It's not that complicated. The basic core mechanics are not that complicated. I recommend doing a short scenario, starting off with some of the basic rules, and start pushing counters around, and you'll get a grasp of this relatively quickly. But there are quite a few rules there because it's tactical, kind of by necessity. You also get a module and scenarios, and again, I think they're probably going to do the same thing in Blood and Fury, although I don't know if they're going to spiral bound it. They're starting to spiral bound some of their lock and load tactical type stuff. I can't recall if they were going to do that for Blood and Fury, but you're going to get modules, rules, and scenarios. So this basically talks about some of the modules that came with this expansion set, but you mainly have a lot of scenarios, which is going to tell you about your formation cards and the different units, and then where you're going to put them on the board. But you're going to have different scenarios. And anybody that's played, a tactical game like Squad Leader or Panzer Leader or all the different types of tactical games or you play Lock and Load Tactical from Lock and Load Publishing, you're going to have different scenario setups that give you a little bit of context, show you how to set out the board or which boards to use, and then where to put the counters on the board and any kind of special rules, and away you go. Now, this expansion set had the Defensive Frankfurt, Storm and Seal Second Wave, and the Drive on Gießen. This is more of a campaign game that had kind of an operational or somewhat strategic or operational map that you move stuff around, and then you'll fight individual battles once there was units in the same area. And it was a way to play this whole game as kind of a campaign game. And then the Defense of Frankfurt, and it was like a mega scenario with which you could put a lot of the maps together and do this massive scenario. And then Storm and Steel, I think, just added more units like Czechoslovakia or more factions and stuff like that. And that's a lot what Blood and Fury is going to do. I think it's going to add more factions to the game mix. I think the British or Commonwealth come into play, and maybe some of the other European countries. I just bought it, right? Why am I supposed to know what's in it? Anyway, so this all had like different modules and scenarios for the Storm and Steel, the Defense of Frankfurt, the rules for the campaign system. And then, of course, with any lock and load game, you're going to have tons of charts and player aids. And this is kind of a good one to show what the counters look like. Now, that might look really complicated. It's really not that bad. You've got your armor piercing, your high explosive. So armor piercing is going to go against armor. Yeah, high explosive is going to go against unarmored or, lightly armored type vehicles, trucks and stuff like that. Then you have your armor. Not everything's going to have armor. Armor's going to have armor. That makes sense. But that's basically kind of a saving roll. You get to roll 3 dice. If you roll a 6, then you eliminate 1 hit for each 6 you roll. This is your movement, and the movement might be amphibious. Like if it's blue, it might be amphibious. If it's green, then that means it's a transport. It can carry stuff. If it's got an H on it, it's a helicopter. If it's an F, no, wait a second. So the F is the helicopter, and this is helicopter transport. You also have assault. That's when you're entering into the same hex. When 2 units are in the same hex, you can do assault. So you roll 2 dice, and you've got the superscript is the to hit. So you got to roll 4, and of course that can be modified by terrain and other things. Then you also have armor piercing, so that's your range. That's how many dice you get to roll, and that's what you got to hit. Pretty simple. And for high explosive, range, how many dice you get to roll, and to hit. And if you roll a hit, the other side is going to roll. If they have armor, they get to roll armor to try to save that. That's basically the game. This kind of, to me, is reminiscent of the old Z factor, or the Z factor, or way you read a counter in Panzerleader and Panzerblitz. They had the kind of that notion of what are the different. There was 4 factors or 4 numbers on that counter, and they say you read it in a Z formation. Anyway, at least my Panzerleader came out with that. I don't know, that stuck with me. That stuck with me for a lot of years. So here's all your different types of counters, and of course, this is where the complexity of the game comes in, is that there's different counters that have different units and different vehicles that have different capabilities. There's infantry support weapons and towed units and all kinds of stuff you can add on. There's all kinds of different weapons. There's airstrikes. There's offboard artillery. We get into some of the offboard artillery and smoke and high explosive and what have you. Quite a bit of stuff that can go into this game. Again, at its core, not that complex. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. But there is complexity as you get into some of the deeper scenarios. So again, a lot of player aids, and I imagine there's going to be the same kind of player aids that come in the Blood and Fury. There's holding boxes, there's places for the card decks and offboard artillery and weather and all kinds of stuff, and turn tracks, your sequence of play. And again, that's it. That's not too bad for a tactical game. Your terrain effects charts. So there you have it. There is quite a bit of stuff that's going to come in the box, and I imagine they're going to do the same thing for Blood and Fury. Here's your line of sight that explains, like any tactical game, you're going to have some kind of explanation of line of sight. And weather changes, again, it gets as complicated as you kind of want to get into it. And then, of course, they have like a battle generator that you can make your own scenarios. You have the different scenario books. There's a lot in this, but you can make your own, and there's like a cost for the different units, and you can kind of work out what is a balanced scenario based on all the different units that come in the game. Anyway, that's what I have today. Blood and Fury's on its way out. I don't know if there's still late pledges or extended pledges or whatever you want to get into that. I don't do a lot of GameFound or Kickstarter stuff. But I don't know. I got the email and I said, geez, I want to pull this off the shelf because I think I'm going to play some of this. And before I do that, I thought I'd share a little bit with you. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're having a good one. Take care. Not so fast. Don't run away yet. Also didn't talk about Solo Assistant, but Lock and Load sold for both World at War 85 and Nations at War, which is basically a card-based AI, but also has some decision trees in it as well that you can basically simulate your opponent to play the game. Now, that is something I think that is different in Blood and Fury. I need to check on that. They might build in a solo assist into that game or into the GameFound pledge. I think a solo assist might come along with it. So I think this still will work, but I think they have a different solo assist that's in there. I could be wrong. I need to check my email. But anyway, now that's all. You can go away now. Seriously, have a good one. Dan needs a video. Dan needs a video. Oh my God. Hey, cup of Joe. I don't got time for coffee. Thanks for watching.